appointment to FEMA should be finalized within the week. I've already discussed the matter with the senator.
I take it he was agreeable?
He didn't really have a choice.
Has he been infected?
Oh yes, most certainly. When I mentioned that we could put him on the priority list for the ambrosia vaccine, he was so willing it was almost pathetic.
This plague, the rioting, is intensifying to the point where we may not be able to contain it.
Why contain it? Let it spill over into the schools and churches. Let the bodies pile up in the streets. In the end, they'll beg us to save them.
I've received reports of armed attacks on shipments. There's not enough vaccine to go around, and the underclasses are starting to get desperate.
Of course they're desperate. They can smell their death, and the sound they'll make rattling their cage will serve as a warning to the rest.
I hope you're not underestimating the problem. The others may not go as quietly as you think. Intelligence indicates they're behind the problems in Paris.
A bunch of pretentious old men playing at running the world. But the world left them behind long ago. We are the future.
We have other problems.
UNATCO?
Formed by executive order after the terrorist strike on the statue. I have someone in place, though. I'm more concerned about Savage. He's relocated to Vandenberg.
Our biochem corpus is far in advance of theirs, as is our electronic sentience, and their ethical inflexibility has allowed us to make progress in areas they refuse to consider.
The augmentation project?
Among other things, but I must admit that I have been somewhat disappointed in the performance of the primary unit.
The secondary unit should be online soon. It's currently undergoing preparation and will be operational within 6 months. My people will continue to report on its progress. If necessary, the primary will be terminated.
We've had to endure much, you and I, but soon there will be order again. A new age. Aquinas spoke of the mythical city on the hill. Soon, that city will be a reality, and we will be crowned its kings. Better than kings. Gods.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming. Thank you so much for tuning in for another video. I really appreciate that. I'm working my first video on a new microphone, so hopefully it's going to come through a little clearer than my previous videos. So, today's video is part of my series called How Does It Play Today, where I look back on games that are celebrating their 25th anniversary. We're in a new year now as this video is going up in 2025, so I'm going to be looking at games now from the year 2000. And for the first game, I have chosen an old nostalgic favorite of mine, the original Deus Ex. Like the other games in the series, the original Deus Ex is a role-playing game played from a first-person perspective with a heavy emphasis on stealth. The interface is pretty standard here. You can see you have a screen for inventory, one showing your health of your body, all your augmentations, your skills, quests and your objectives, messages you received, and so on. The game plays pretty much as you expect it would. There's a lot of combat and a lot of different ways to go about combat, including stealth takedowns and so on. The game opens with you playing as the agent J.C. Denton, the new agent spoken of in the opening, meeting with the primary agent, your brother Paul. There has been a terrorist strike on the Statue of Liberty, and terrorist forces have seized a shipment of what's called ambrosia, the vaccine for the plague, the Gray Death that's going around, and you are being charged by UNATCO, the United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition, to retrieve the ambrosia and to deal with the terrorists. Now, like a lot of role-playing games, you'll have various options of dealing with this, including this conversation with your brother Paul as to how you want to approach the fight.
Stun your opponents or knock them unconscious. A non-lethal takedown is always the most silent way to eliminate resistance. Just in case, though, Manderley wants you to pick an additional weapon. A sniper rifle, a GEP gun, or a mini crossbow. The crossbow. Sometimes you've got to make a silent takedown. Good thinking. With these tranquilizer darts, you'll have another non-lethal way to take down an enemy in addition to the prod.
So you can kind of decide how much lethality you want to apply in any given situation. And those choices will have an impact on the way the game plays forward and how other characters react to you and what goes on from there. So choices do matter. Your brother Paul then gives you a picture of the local terrorist leader and who you have to apprehend. and your mission is off and running. Much of the game you'll be playing probably in stealth, watching your enemies approach from afar. Stealth mostly seems to be a function of distance and shadow. It feels like that if you are very far away from the enemy and in shadow, they can't see you at all. Obviously, obstructions work well, and crouching seems to have a big impact on that. So it is, like I said, it is a heavily influenced stealth game. Stealth takedowns, like using this riot prod or the crossbow I selected earlier, are a big thing. You know, being able to quietly dispose of a body and hide it. These are all staples of this feature and of most stealth RPG type games. You can also go ham and go in guns blazing. Deus Ex has a lot of options for guns and melee weapons, long and short distance. There's also explosives you can rig. You can either rig them as mines or throw them as grenades for anti-personnel or anti-robot use. So there are a lot of choices. It really just depends on what the player wants to do and how bloody they want to get. There are also a lot of non-combat skills. As this sequence will show, the player has to hack through security to avoid that turret gun up there, and then lockpick the door above, the panel above, to unlock a key code where they can there enter a key for a code they just found on a dead body a few minutes beforehand. And as you'll see here, I got the code wrong the first time, so I had to go look in my notes to get the correct code. And that showed me using a device to bypass security. Here I am lockpicking, and then I'll do the code. So there are a lot of ways, a lot of different skills involved in this game. And all of these, of course, can be augmented for greater or effectiveness through the game. Obviously, to pick more difficult locks and whatnot. Again, this is all pretty standard fare in role-playing circles, and Deus Ex is pretty standard in that regard. Anyway, as the player moves through the missions, through this first mission around the statue and then subsequent ones, you kind of start to get the impression that something isn't right. What you're being told about the terrorists and about the Gray Death, the plague, is not really what's going on. Interactions with your superiors are going to become increasingly uneasy, and with your brother, until the truth kind of comes out. And that's how we know this is all a complete work of fiction, right? Because no government would ever use some kind of widespread disease in order to enhance their power and restrict their citizenry. I mean, that's absolutely never happened in history, right?
Yeah, me.
Okay, anyway, putting that issue aside, let's get to the point. In 2025, Deus Ex, how does it play today? Well, I'll be honest, I did not enjoy coming back to Deus Ex. I did not enjoy my time spent back in this game. Deus Ex was a game I played when it released. I really enjoyed it back in the day. I had a lot of fond memories of it, a lot of fond memories of going through the different scenarios, trying different reactions, and seeing how it worked out. In terms of story-based gameplay where your choices matter and things you do have repercussions, it's still a very good game. Beyond that, though, I found the combat and the movement to be extremely janky and uneven. Trying to do a stealth pacifist run where you don't kill anybody, I found to be very difficult, even in easy. Not necessarily because of stealth detection, but because in order to do that, the crossbow with the tranquilizer darts and the riot prod I showed earlier were reliable methods. However, to do a melee stealth takedown requires hitting the enemy in a very small hitbox in the back of their head and neck. It felt very inconsistent. I felt like I had lined up perfectly several times, and all it did was alert them to my presence when I struck them with a non-lethal weapon. So it just didn't feel like it was a very sure proposition when you did that. That made it very hard to do a pacifist run. And there are places where it's just very, very hard to stealth all the way through. You can go Rambo like I just showed in this clip here, though enemies tend to do a great deal of damage, even on easy. So unless you kind of prep the battlefield like I did by planting a mine so the first guy who ran up the stairs blew himself up, and making a sneak attack, or have a good retreat method planned where you can run away. That's also kind of difficult to do, to go in guns blazing. You're going to have to mostly apply a blended approach of stealth and some lethal action in most cases, especially on the harder difficulties. And this is an old game, so hard means hard. It's not easy, and you can be dropped in just a few hits on hard difficulty. Somebody may come in and tell me, look, stealth is easy, you just got to get good, know what you're doing. Okay, fine. That wasn't my experience this time, and all I can do is give my perspective. If you disagree, then that's fine too. The enemy AI is absolutely abysmal, even by this era's standards. I can lean out here with my crossbow and trank this guy. He'll sound the alarm, and then a moment later, it's like nothing ever happened. None of the enemy can ascend ladders, which is why so many of areas in this game have ramps, because they can't get to you if you're up a ladder. See, alarm has sounded, and a couple of guys just going back to their normal conversations, even though their tranked buddies are laying around in the alley. I get that it's what they consider to be an anti-frustration feature, so that if you have a minor mistake, it doesn't make it impossible to proceed. It does have the effect of ruining immersion, though. Gameplay aside, Deus Ex is one of these games from this era that is really hard to get to run well on modern Windows systems. Message boards and forums are full of people who have encountered game-breaking glitches and bugs, things like NPCs not being where they're supposed to be, which prevents the main story from progressing, essentially ruining your run, your playthrough. A lot of people swear by a launcher known as Kentie's launcher, which I'm showing here, that apparently solves a lot of the problems. I didn't try it, but from what I've read, they say it solves a lot of the optimization, and it patches in a lot of fixes for known issues. Deus Ex actually also is incredibly dark. I don't mean the tone of the game, I mean the visibility. All of the clips I've shown so far are after I have tinkered with the settings in the video editing software, trying to punch up the visibility. I'm going to show this same clip again here in a second, where you can see how it was playing out of the box, and you can see how dark it is. This becomes a real problem later in the game when you are in areas that are supposed to be dark in terms of stealthing and finding your way. It's pitch black, you can't see anything. And this clip is with the monitor settings maxed out and the in-game settings maxed out. It's just very, very dark. I did find a Steam thread that offered some I&I settings that did mitigate it somewhat, though it only mitigated it for what was appearing on my screen. The recording software was still capturing the native dark settings. I will provide a link to the Steam thread and to Kentie's website if anybody is interested. However, when you start adding these issues up in totality, it just becomes more and more hoops you have to jump through just to get the game to work well. So what is my final verdict, I guess, on this? I know a lot of people will disagree with this even strongly, but I would say right now, I do not recommend going back and playing Deus Ex. I don't think it's worth going back to play again. I agree that the story, the decision-making, it's top-notch, having a consequential story, where you make decisions that matter later in the game. In that sense, Deus Ex still provides a pretty good experience. However, in terms of gameplay, I just don't think it's aged very well. It has a lot of technical problems. I didn't use Kentie's launcher, and maybe this would have helped it, but I did have a number of hangs. I did have cases where I couldn't climb ladders without restarting my game, things like that. So, and obviously I covered the darkness issue. It just does not function very well on modern computers, and you can feel it. You can feel the age of the game. So, I mean, it's worth playing once. If you have a nostalgia factor for it, you might go back to it and love it. If you've come up on modern games, I really recommend that rather than this, you go and play some of the more modern Deus Ex games like Human Revolution, where you can get a similar experience without the problems. Maybe go and try the Dishonored series, which is a great experience. It has some consequential gameplay as well. But for me, I just didn't enjoy my time back in Deus Ex, and so I can't recommend it. And if people disagree with me, well, I think that's fine. I think people should be allowed to like what they like, but this wasn't it for me. Anyway, I am going to I've probably babbled long enough, so I'm going to bring this one to a close. If you enjoyed the content on this channel, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. If you didn't enjoy the video, if you think I'm wrong, tell me down below. I'm happy to discuss it, and I'd love to hear other people's opinions. It doesn't bother me if somebody thinks I'm wrong, because that's the great thing about games, is that everybody can have an opinion, and sharing it with each other is part of the fun. If you have a game you'd like to see featured in this series, please let me know. I have a lineup. This is my first game from 2000 that I'm featuring. I have a lineup of games I'm looking at. If you have one you would like to see, though, it's early. See if you can let me know. I'll get it in the mix for 2025. Like I said, looking at games from year 2000. So if you have one you'd like to see, let me know down below. With that, I am going to call it quits here and move on to the next thing. I appreciate you all tuning in, hanging in there, and staying with me for this video. So, welcome to 2025. Everyone go out there, y'all live your best lives, and y'all stay gaming.